And I'm going to be using some maps, which from this distance it's a little bit difficult to see, but I'll be making my points, and this is hyperlinked. So if you click on the link, you can get the whole thing page by page. And also, sorry if I'm not as sprightly as I usually am. My arm I felt on Sunday, so I'm a little bit injured. Okay, so first, what is the problem? The problem is that the Iran nuclear issue is really seen, in my view, through two faulty prisms. The first prism is that it's an Israel issue. And so people look through it sort of an Israel-centric issue. The other is a mutually assured destruction, sort of a USSR versus United States type of nuclear relationship. And my thesis is that it's not, we shouldn't be looking at it through an Israeli prism, and we should not be looking at it through really a symmetric nuclear threat. In fact, we should be looking at it through an asymmetric nuclear threat, and through not an Israel problem, but in fact a Saudi Arabia-Persian Gulf problem, which really is one of the driving forces in almost every single article or word you read in today's papers, whether it's in Syria, whether it's in Egypt, whether it's in Turkey. Really, everywhere you look, there is this schism, which is really the focal point. And I'm going to get right to it because time is of the essence. Now, the two leading proponents of both the fatwa theory is President Obama. And on the mutually assured destruction aspect, it's Brzezinski. So those are two rather sizable people. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to, in fact, be showing how an EMP use by Saudi Arabia, by Iran against Saudi Arabia, in fact, makes it both a fatwa-compliant use of a nuclear weapon, as well as a rational use of a nuclear weapon. And so, to give you a little bit of an idea, let's just get right to the topography of it. And so let's go to page 9 of the handout. Now, page 9 of the handout, what struck me is when you look at the topography of the Middle East, this is the Zagros Mountains. And the Zagros Mountains elevate to about 4,500 meters. And just to give you an idea, if you look up close after the talk, if the Zagros are 4,500 meters, the Alps are only about 4,300 meters. And the Rockies are only about 4,300 meters. So you're talking mountains that are taller than the Rockies and the Alps. Now, those mountains are the dividing line in many, many, many ways. If you look at these mountains, you'll realize, and how I came to this was I was looking at those mountains. And that was in my mind's eye. And so then I saw the diagram that you see in page 9. And the diagram you see in page 9 is a famous map by Azadi, which shows the oil and gas resources of the Middle East. So I look at this map, and what struck me about this map was, in fact, the oil that you see concentrated in the Persian Gulf is defined by this line, in that all of the oil is south and west of that mountain, in that upper part. So that gave me an idea. And I said, can I better define that oil concentration? And sure enough, after jiggering a little bit, I came up with a triangle. And if everyone could look at this triangle, okay, or the general shape of the triangle, and if I put it right on the topography over here, what you will see is that in frame 4, almost all the oil and gas that Saudi Arabia has, that's in the Persian Gulf, that's in Syria, Iraq, or anywhere in the Persian Gulf area, is underneath this triangle. And so if you go to here, you'll see that all the oil of Saudi Arabia is in the east-north of the Persian Gulf. And similarly, all the oil for Iraq. So it's really concentrated in a very, very, very tiny geographic area. Now, if you go to page 13, and you look at the oil flow, these maps are from OPEC, about 18 million, but let's just say 20 million barrels a day comes from this triangle. That is the whole ball of wax. And it basically represents, off of OPEC's numbers, 56% of the world's oil supply is in this one triangle. So the concept is, if you're looking at it from an Iranian point of view, what do they actually have to focus on taking? They don't have to focus on taking the entire Saudi Arabia. All they have to focus on taking is this area. And there's one more overlay. If you go to page 15, you'll see a Shia distribution map. And this map shows that if Saudi Arabia has 22 million people and 2 million Shia, believe it or not, almost all the 2 million Shia are right in this part. So now, I'm going to skip over what is an important part, but actually I won't, because it's very important. Sorry about that. If you look, the same way that all of the oil in Saudi Arabia is in the east-north, similarly, all of the oil in Iran is in this area here, which is the southwest. And why? Because if you look over here, you'll actually see there's this topographic plateau. And believe it or not, all of Iran's Arab population is in this plateau. And it's a very interesting problem in that people say it's a Shiite Muslim, it's a Shiite Sunni conflict. I actually believe it's the exact opposite. I believe it's a Persian Arab conflict, in that if you look at this, what you're really seeing is that right now, the Shiite Persians are in fact stopping all of the water from flowing into Ahwaz and basically attempting to push the Arabs out, the Shiite Arabs out of Ahwaz. So that's an important aspect. But now let's get to another important part, is that while all of the oil is in this western aspect of Iran, all of Iran's nuclear facilities are east of the Zagros. So for Israel to attack, or for really anyone to attack the facilities, they have to not only go to Iraq, they then have to go up mountains that are the height of the Rockies, and then they have to go in the mountains because they're in it's a plateau. So all of these facilities are a mile elevation generally above sea level. So you have 2.5 mile mountains, and then you have to go down 1.5 miles, and then you have to go up again. So it's a difficult proposition. So now let's get to EMP. If you turn to page 24, I've created sort of a bibliography where you can go through and look at original resources, whether it's a defense document. I have all different sources. But let's first talk about what happens in 2002. 2002, there was a James Bond movie, and that movie was Die Another Day. And in that movie, it actually was a movie about North Korea attacking South Korea. And in that movie, they had a whole EMP effect of what would happen to South Korea if North Korea did this. Lo and behold, in 2002, Kim Jong-un actually almost simultaneously breaks his seals on his nuclear facilities. But this is where it gets interesting. So 2002, you have this movie. Now, if you go to page 28, there was a report by Bill Gertz, who's fantastic, recently, of a 2005 INGIC report. Now, INGIC, if you go to page 29, is the National Ground Intelligence Center. So what does INGIC say in 2005? They say in 2003 and 4, China all of a sudden starts testing mammals with EMP. And not only that, this INGIC report says that how China would use an EMP is against a U.S. aircraft carrier. This is an actual INGIC report. Okay? So this is 2003-4. Now, 2005, a very, very enterprise, this is before North Korea sets off its nuclear blast, a major in the Air Force, for his thesis, says, how is North Korea going to use its nukes? Come on. It's only got 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 nukes. How could they really use it against the superpower that's got 1,000 nukes? That was it before Obama starts denuking us. How are they going to use it? So he says, this is not me, this is a colonel, a major who's now a colonel, by the way. He says how they're going to use this nuke is to level the playing field by using it as an EMP weapon to be followed on with a conventional attack. And remember, how does an EMP work? It doesn't kill anybody. You explode 50 kilometers above the Earth's atmosphere, and it fries out all the electronics. So what I have basically done is I have basically taken Major Miller's thesis, which is from a North Korea, South Korea perspective, and I said, gee whiz, there are so many connections between North Korea and Iran, why can't we use that same Miller thesis as an attack by Iran against Saudi Arabia? And so that is my basic thesis. Now, the rest of what I have here is I have defense documents that, again, are online and open source from various places. For instance, the Office of the Secretary of Defense, nuclear survivability, all these things that basically say our entire defensive structure is no longer able to absorb an EMP blast because when the Cold War ended, we stopped worrying about EMP. So instead of buying hardened systems, we bought commercial off-the-shelf systems that were not EMP-proof. And so I have all of those sites and references for you to click on, and the actual hyperlinks take you to the actual documents themselves. But now what happens is, lo and behold, 2011, West fears possible North Korea-Iran links. Duh. Okay? But then this is where it gets interesting. 2011, South Korea defenseless against North Korea electronic attack, saying exactly what Major Miller was talking about. Another one, hundreds of Iranian nationals or nuclear and North Korean nuclear and missile facilities. And I have more articles from the local press saying about that issue. So now, the final thing before we get to the denouement is, how do you deliver this? How do you deliver an EMP bomb? Well, if North Korea were going to do it to America, I have an actual grid of, there's a North Korean satellite going overhead, and these are the trajectories of the North Korean satellite. But that's a tougher thing. Landing something like that thousands of miles is a tough thing. But the whole trick here is if you have a launch, you can explode it in the up phase of the launch, and it's just as effective. You don't need to have a down phase. So actually, if you look at it from that perspective, the two botched North Korea launches actually were successful if they were using them as an EMP type of attack, and that was what they were developing it for. But now we'll get to the bottom line. Bottom line is, if you look here, there is absolutely no, it's a flat run. It's a flat run in this whole area. And remember, it doesn't kill anybody. So could you imagine if, and let's just get back to the rationality part. What would Iran be thinking about if they attack Israel first, they attack a hardened target, 1,000 miles away? If they attack Saudi Arabia, they attack a soft target, and they collect not only all of the oil, they also collect their Shia brethren. And they attack Saudi Arabia, where it's almost like they're attacking in 900 AD, without any relatively modern, I mean, they've still got the Kalashnikovs, because EMP does not disturb any World War II or post-World War II type weapons. So, in fact, it's very rational that they would attack Saudi Arabia in the time of Muhammad with that type of a weapon, where they're not killing anyone. And isn't it a religious thing? You could actually say it's a religious use of a weapon, because you're killing less people than if you attack conventionally. So, the bottom line here is this is a threat both from North Korea to South Korea that we are suffering today, and from Iran to Saudi Arabia, where could you imagine if, God forbid, something like this happened and Iran was able to collect 25,000 living American soldiers as hostages? How could we, with that kind of hostage situation, counterattack? So, taking all of these things together, in conclusion, my belief is how we have to look at the Iranian threat is with one nuclear bomb, they're not going to be attacking America, they're going to be turning OPEC into Iran-PEC.